I'm also moved by it.
Yes. Yes, tell me about that. What moves you?
You talking to me?
Looks like we're in for a little storm. Let's get back to camp. Come on.
Man, I don't know about you, Brady, but it sure looks like we're in for a little storm. Hi, and welcome to the Pretentious Film Bros podcast, where it is our mission to break down the barriers and build connections through film. I'm Nolan Jones, and I'm joined here with my co-host Brady Odom, and today we are on part 3 of our John Ford Marathon. Now, as we've been working our way through the John Ford Marathon, we've been working in a chronological order of when the 6 films that we selected were released. So the first film we talked about was the Western classic Stagecoach. And we spent lots of time delving into the characters throughout that film that make up the Stagecoach community, as well as some of the amazing set pieces, including that final chase with the Apache Indians. For our second film, we turned our attention to My Darling Clementine. And we really wanted to focus not just on the characters who make up the town, Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, and Clementine, but we really focused a lot on the set pieces. It was the town of Tombstone that made up this film. It was the gunfight at the OK Corral. It was the story, the way the story moved from plot point A to B to C. Now today, we're going to take a little bit of a shift. Because as we were building this John Ford Marathon, we thought it was important not only to highlight some of the Westerns that made John Ford the legendary American filmmaker that he was, and arguably, some of those Westerns we haven't even touched on yet. Don't worry, if we've missed your favorite, it's coming in the marathon. But we also wanted to take time to step outside the Western genre and explore maybe some of John Ford's lesser known films. So today, we take a trip to Mogambo, Africa for John Ford's 1953 film, Mogambo. Now, Brady, this was a film that I was really excited to get to watch. It's a film that had been on my watch list for a long time. I'd checked it out from the library and returned it multiple times without getting the chance to watch it. I'd had it on my streaming watch list multiple times, and then it had been removed, and then they put it back on the streaming, and it's just one I never got a chance to catch. So as we were building this marathon, when I saw that Mogambo was a John Ford film, I just had to put it on there. It was the perfect opportunity to finally force myself to watch this film that had been on my watch list probably since like 2022. Wow. It had been there a long time. So I was really thrilled to watch this film. We're going to go ahead and we'll get into my thoughts here in a minute. But first I wanted to see, what were your first reactions to this film? Because it was one you hadn't heard of. It was completely new to you when it came to John Ford. As I imagine, it was completely new to many of the people that'll be joining us with this discussion. So what was your first reaction, your initial thoughts of the story, the characters? How did all that work for you? And maybe give us also, if you will, a quick synopsis of how the story plays out.
No, yeah, you're right. I wasn't familiar with Mogambo. I mean, I knew about like the big popular John Ford, classics of Stagecoach, My Darling Clementine. Knew about Wagon Master and The Searchers and The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, like all these big name films that had come out under his like filmography. Mogambo, not even close. Would have never. And what's crazy is that it's not all these no-name actors and actresses. These are big stars. You have Clark Gable, who was from It Happened One Night, which is a great film. And you have Grace Kelly, who is a Hitchcock muse. It's like these people aren't just all of a sudden like, oh, look at these no-namers and low-budget John Ford film. I mean, John Ford at this time had made classics. He made a ton of big movies to this point. Because, as you said, we're discussing it in chronological order. So when we get to Mogambo, you're getting to see the trust that Hollywood was building in John Ford. The first thing you notice about Mogambo is compared to My Darling Clementine and compared to Stagecoach, it's in color. It's a Technicolor picture. It's not just beautiful black and white photography like My Darling Clementine, or even like old, almost guerrilla style filmmaking like Stagecoach. It captures your eye and it keeps your attention. Not only that, it's not a Western. My Darling Clementine and Stagecoach are very inherent Westerns. You have saloons, you have drinking, you have women, you have all kinds of the Western tropes in those other two films. And maybe at that point they weren't considered tropes, given he was one of the establishing people to start creating Westerns. But you see now, okay, wow, we're not even, this doesn't feel like John Ford at all. And it continues because now not only is it not a Western, we're in the jungle. Like, we're seeing big animals. Like, we're seeing giraffes, we're seeing rhinos, we're seeing panthers, we're seeing cheetahs, we're seeing all kinds of crazy animals on screen in a way that we hadn't seen before from John Ford, at least. So all of these things are immediate, on the surface, aesthetic differences between John Ford's films we watched before to John Ford film we're watching, today, or when we did Mogambo. All that being said, as exciting and as large scale this film was, it really lacks in a lot of other ways that previous John Ford films do not. My initial opinions and thoughts are the characters are weak. And aside from one, which I'll discuss later in further detail, who I think is the strongest character, and it probably won't be, a crazy, unpopular opinion. I think a lot of people who watch this film will agree with me. And I thought the story was really thin. I thought there was really no weight to the story. It felt like we're kind of going from point A to point B. Maybe there's intention. Maybe there's not. Really don't know. It just kind of felt like we're going to go here and then we're going to go see the gorillas. And I don't know if that was your experience with it, but that's how I felt. It didn't feel like there were also any stakes. There was no, despite being in the jungle, despite Grace Kelly's character being out in the middle of the jungle by herself, almost falling into a trap, you're just not nervous. You're not sitting there in this stress mode. You're almost more annoyed. And it's really because of how pathetic, in a way, they make Grace Kelly look. You're like, that's not it's not amusing. It's not interesting. So for me, this was the first John Ford film that I could acknowledge the directing had really stepped up a notch in just about every single way. I mean, his handling of everything, it looks good. I mean, it's directed well. There's nothing inherently bad about the directing. But the script he chose to work with, no, not the move. It looks nice, and unfortunately, it also kind of drags. That's the other thing that's kind of bad with the story, is for a story about being in the jungle, you would think maybe it would be more exciting. And I don't need deep character work, by the way, every time I watch a movie. I don't need every movie to have enthralling just depth. I need to just, dig deep into and really be thinking and contemplating about as I leave the movie. It's like, I don't need that in every movie. But I needed something more than what we got here. And if I wasn't going to get something more, I at least needed it to be interesting. So those are my initial thoughts. My official rating on Letterboxd, the head of ratings, essentially, where anybody goes for true objective opinions.
Absolutely. Rotten Tomatoes, who?
Yeah, no Metacritic. No, we're not doing IMDb. We're doing Letterboxd, and my official rating is 2.5 stars. I left underwhelmed, and for every good thing about the movie, there was something equally as bad or uninteresting or bland. And so for me, it's the first film in our John Ford marathon that's just a complete, like almost a complete miss.
Yeah, this was really tough. Because it is, when you have a film on your list for so long, that you keep going back to and missing and going back to and missing and doing this back and forth, for as long as I did with Mogambo. And to be clear, this was a film that had been on my watch list because of Grace Kelly. She's one of my favorite actors from kind of that golden era of Hollywood, that 40s to the 60s kind of era. And I've seen her in multiple projects. I've seen her in all of Hitchcock's pieces. As you mentioned, she was kind of a Hitchcock muse. She was in To Catch a Thief. She was in Rear Window. She was in Dial M for Murder, which I think still to this day is her best performance and the most entertaining film that she's in. I've seen her in other films outside of Hitchcock. The musical High Society, which is a retelling of the Philadelphia story. So I've seen Grace Kelly in some amazing roles. I've seen her in roles where she is very feminine, because you can't have Grace Kelly and not have her feminine. I mean, it's just not who she was. She became a princess later on in life, like a literal princess, somewhere in England. The country escapes me right now. But she married into royalty. So you can't have a non-gracious, non-feminine Grace Kelly. And she is that in all these films, but she's also entertaining. She's also proactive. She also has a character. She has a purpose. She has goals. She has things that she's striving for. She butts heads with the people around her in a way that is fascinating and is real. Feels really and truly feminine, even in ways that may have been ahead of its time in the 40s and 50s and 60s. So seeing her here in Mogambo was just completely heartbreaking. It was so disappointing for this film that I had wanted to see for so long because of her, and then to see how they shape her character and the story that they choose to tell. So Mogambo is a story about this trapper in Africa, Victor, played by Clark Gable. And essentially what Clark Gable does is he goes and he traps wild animals, and then he sends them back across the ocean for zoos, largely for circuses, for things of that nature. And in his trappings, a young woman shows up at his hut one day, Ava Gardner's character, Eloise Kelly. Not Grace Kelly, but Eloise Kelly, played by Ava Gardner. And she shows up and she's there to meet some very prince or duke or some high royal guy that is going to take her on this trip or on this date. And he's not there. So Victor ends up stuck with her for a couple nights. During that time they're together, they kind of start to build this flirtatious fling kind of deal. They know it's going to end, but they're having this little bit of romance for a couple weeks while she's gone, or while she's there before she leaves. And then a couple weeks later, this ferry comes in that's supposed to take Kelly, the character, away and bring in Grace Kelly's character, Linda, and her husband, Donald, who they are anthropologists there to study. They're going to be studying. Victor's going to take them on tours of the animals so they can study the animals. And really, Donald is the anthropologist, and Grace Kelly's Linda is his wife. And she's a little bit of an anthropologist. You get the feeling that she helps him in some of his work. But really, he's the one that kind of leads the studying and leads the anthropological expeditions and all those kinds of things. So they get there on this boat, the same boat that Kelly, Ava Gardner's Kelly, leaves out on. And they're going to be there, and immediately Donald gets sick, and this tension, this romantic tension, begins to build between Victor and Linda. And you see these two characters kind of start to form this relationship, but they know, oh, we can't, she's married, all that kind of fun stuff. Well, something happens to the boat that Kelly is on, and she ends up back at the hut, back at Victor's place. So now you have these two people who were both available, Victor and Kelly, and now you have Linda here, who is not available, but who Victor has really started to take this liking to, and they're all thrown together in this really tight space. Well, Kelly's no dummy. She picks up on it immediately, and she starts to kind of tease and taunt Victor and Linda, poking at it, saying, you know what you're doing, I know what you're doing, I see it. So then Victor decides, all right, you know what we're going to do? We're going to go see the gorillas. Because that's really why Donald and Linda have came. They wanted to study the gorillas, but Victor was like, no. That's dangerous country. I'm not doing it. Mm-hmm. But after so much of Kelly's taunting, he's like, we're going to go see the gorillas. And that's kind of his plan to get them out. He's trying to ease some of the romantic tension between him and Linda and trying to really get them out. And they're going to go on this expedition. And the rest of the film is them traveling to this village where they get these men, these native Africans, who are going to row them down the river. They're going to take them to this place where the gorillas are. They're going to serve kind of as their crew for this expedition to help these people and to guide them. And then it goes from they go to this village, some things happen, they get the African tribe to go with them, and then they go, and then they see the gorillas. But while they're there, the tension just builds between between Linda and Victor, and Kelly's there kind of on the outskirts, and she's playing into the triangle and keeps poking them and taunting them. And really, it's this love triangle that how's it going to end? Who's going to end up with who? Is Linda going to tell Donald? Is he going to find out? What's going to happen? Oh, and we're going to go see the gorillas. And that's really the story. Like you said, it's very thin, even for a romantic triangle where the stakes almost shouldn't be able to be higher. You never feel truly that tension. And it's not because you're like, oh, he's not going to end up with X, Y, or Z. It's just the relationships don't seem to feel real enough, maybe is the word. It feels like there's really no weight to these decisions. The characters really don't feel the risk of what's going on. Maybe they're not developed enough for us to feel the weight of what they're doing. It's really one of those things where you kind of don't care about any of the characters. Any of those main three, because they're all kind of scummy. And I say you don't care about any of the main three. That's not entirely true. When we talk into characters, we'll talk about the one kind of shining star of this film as far as characters and actor portrayals go. But yeah, it was disappointing. It was like you said, when I saw what they did to Grace Kelly, how they shaped Linda as a character, I couldn't get behind it. She was just the character was so whiny, so helpless, so not what I had seen Grace Kelly be in other roles in other films. And it really did not do her justice. So yeah, this was another miss for me too. Yeah, so for me, this was, at best, Mogambo came at a low 3-star. It was a very mid film. Like you said, technically, it was very nice. A lot of the imagery and the images, the shots we got of the animals interacting in their habitat, which we'll talk a little bit about that as we move later into the podcast, was really nice and really cool to see. It was a beautiful film. It transports you into Africa. And those shots where you have those wild animals and you see the gorillas interacting and things of that nature. But when it comes out of the nature documentary mode, so to speak, of the animals, when we're left with just the characters, it's just not as interesting. Certainly not near as interesting as either Stagecoach or Clementine. And I would imagine probably as many of his other films that we'll get to later on in the marathon. So if you're a John Ford completist, the film's worth your time. There are moments of this film that are worth your time.
Absolutely.
But if you're really looking for the things that make John Ford the director that he is, you can skip Mogambo.
Yeah,
and
I
that's
agree.
from somebody that really was looking forward to Mogambo.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate because when you brought it up, I was like, I don't know, because I didn't look any of them up. I wanted to come into them kind of forming my own opinion without influence of a letterboxd rating or, conversation online. What do people really think about the movie Mogambo? And so I also appreciate it because you did my job in giving the synopsis. I kind of just talked about the difference, but I didn't give the synopsis. So I appreciate you doing that because I definitely missed that, getting caught up and just comparing and contrasting.
That's what I'm here for.
So, no, I appreciate that. So yeah, I think now as we move forward and we can talk more in depth about each aspect of the film, I think it'd be a good time to kind of talk about what John Ford was anchoring this film on, and that is his characters. And if you watch other John Ford films or even know anything, really basic information about John Ford, you would know his bread and butter is making interesting characters. You can tell through the movies he makes that he believes wholeheartedly good characters make good movies. And I would argue that he's correct, and that Mogambo is a clear example of that missing the mark. And it's interesting because one of the things that is worth noting that is sort of off topic, there's a couple of interesting, we'll say trivia facts about this film while it was being filmed. For example, Grace Kelly and Clark Gable were actually having an affair in real life while this was being filmed. Because Grace Kelly, as great an actress as she was not a great partner. She constantly cheated on her men. And Clark Gable just happened to be the man of choice at this point. And so they were trying to keep their affair under wraps, their real one, while simultaneously filming a movie about an affair between the two characters, which I don't know if that's art imitating life or life imitating art or somewhere in between, but I just find that really fascinating. That's pretty meta. That's pretty meta. And on top of that, Clark Gable and John Ford, which I'm starting to see a pattern with John Ford as well, they didn't get along. They were at each other's throats for the majority of the making of this film. And so you can kind of see and feel it. You can feel that dissonance between them. You can see that they're not in sync. They're not meshing. Because John Ford also in Mogambo, he usually had at least a good crew of people that he worked with consistently, like most directors do. And Mogambo kind of took off in a different direction. He didn't stick with the same people he always works with. He kind of went with different people. So I do think that all of those things play a factor into the negative aspects of this film. And there are things that are not within the film, they're outside the film, that impacted how the film reads. And there are people who still really like this movie. If you look up some reviews, some people still think this is a great John Ford film. And while I would disagree with them, and you seem to disagree with them as well, I can kind of appreciate it because it is so different from the rest of his filmography that maybe the things I wanted to work for it, the things I've come to expect from John Ford, right, it weren't there. And maybe they didn't need that. But if I go to a sandwich shop to get my favorite sandwich, and my favorite sandwich all of a sudden, instead of having spicy mustard, it has sriracha on it, I'm not going to be a big fan. I'm going to be a little confused and surprised and wondering, why does my favorite sandwich not taste like my favorite sandwich? And so, to me, I still go back and forth between which film I like more, between Stagecoach and My Darling Clementine. Because every time I think one takes the lead, the other one gives me a reason to think not. And so now it's like all I know is Mogambo. It's not in that fight. There is no triangle romance with those three films. It's by itself, very much in the corner. And so, with all that being said, the characters obviously doing real life things have now impacted what I truly believe have impacted the way they came across on screen. So I'll start with Clark Gable.
Okay.
And his character is the trapper, right? He's the one who's very familiar with the jungle, with the tribes people. And he has almost adapted this animalistic instinct. I see what I want and I take what I want when I want it. Yep. And you see this play out in him in the way he treats those two women. And while you could say that's interesting on paper, I think that is interesting conceptually. Mm-hmm. But I don't think with the three characters that they have, they don't make it that interesting. He's not, like, it's Clark Gable, so he's semi-attractive, but I don't find him to be this guy who's just like, these two, by the way, astonishingly like beautiful women at that time, fawning over him. That's just not, I get it. Maybe he's got that natural charisma. He's got that confidence. He's got that like bravado that he can be in the jungle and take down a lion. But I mean, he wears loafers. The guy does not look like this like burly man that you would like, I just have to have him. Right. Yeah. And so you get to learn too about each of their characters. The other thing about Grace Kelly's character is she's not even interesting from her own personal level. It's not even just the writing that they give her. Grace Kelly doesn't bring any life to the screen. She is literally a woman who is there with her husband who gets sick. And while he's like, while he's sick, she's out with another man. Yep. And it's like, okay, on paper, that's pretty interesting. And Grace Kelly, she could make it really like, she can make it really scandalous. She can make it really like, feel like you almost, which you wouldn't, but you almost might consider rooting for her. Right. And I think really good characters can do that. Really good actors can do that. And I think Grace Kelly is a good actress. I just don't think her role for this film lended itself to what we're looking at. It just didn't. And you see the way she reacts with Donald, her husband, after she feels guilt. And then you see the way she is with Victor and their like relationship. Yeah, and when they have like this damsel in distress moment when they're out in the jungle and, you know, Victor comes over there and he saves her and it's like this big moment. It's like a big whoop. Who cares? I'm not interested in this relationship. And it's interesting because I think this was the 50s, right? Like 1950 something. 53. 53, thank you. And it was like, so maybe infidelity would be more shocking to an audience at that time. And maybe more compelling to an audience at that time. But to me now, it's like, if you're going to do that, make it interesting. Because I'm not saying don't have infidelity in your film. I think it can serve a huge purpose if you do it well and you make it interesting. I'm not even saying it has to end great. I'm just saying it needs to make the story more compelling, and it doesn't. Because then you think there's going to be a love triangle. And there's really not. Because Ava Gardner, who is my favorite character in the film, one of John Ford's best protagonists, she doesn't care. She's so not interested in the love triangle. It's kind of funny. She's just like, whatever, I'm here. But
she's more interested in making them uncomfortable.
Yes.
And which almost is why I like to out them to her husband.
Yep. It's like, for people watching it, it's like, if you think there's going to be this romantic tension, there isn't. So all the stuff they're like puffing up, it just deflates immediately because Ava Gardner doesn't play, which makes it funny, but it doesn't bring that tension because she's not interested in it. She's just like, like you just said, like, let's make them feel uncomfortable. I don't need anything for myself. For me, the joy will come from watching them squirm. And so that is the part that's like, okay, yeah, it allows for some humor, but with that storyline, and now that Donald feels better, because as I mentioned before, he arrives and he's deathly ill. And now you're thinking, okay, maybe some tension will actually come. Now there'll be like a fight for the man. And there's really not. And
Donald's oblivious.
What?
Donald's oblivious.
Donald has no idea. There was even a moment in the film where I thought he'd caught on, and he hadn't. Nope.
And I
not
was
even-
like, huh, I totally misread that moment.
Yep. And it's unfortunate because I think that there's so many different avenues that this script could have gone. And I don't think it picked the worst route it could have gone, but I do think it picked the most mediocre, the most like just bland route possible. It did not even go for high. Like I would even take absurdism. Like if you wanted to get absurd in the final act, I would take it, right? Over what I got in this script.
Yeah.
But Ava Gardner as Eloise Kelly, when she first arrived on the scene, did not like her character, which I think goes to prove how well Ava Gardner was acting, because she was so insufferable that first 20 minutes that when she left the screen, I felt a lot better. And then when she came back, I was like, oh no. And then she became incredible. And then I was like, wow, okay, she's really funny. She's really interesting. She's really secure, confident in her skin. Like the clear match for Victor. It was one, because she's not already married. So it was like it was just so obvious from the outset that it was like, what's even the point of this weird romantic triangle we're going through?
Mm-hmm.
So when you're trying to hinge this story on these three characters and Donald,
right,
it just doesn't work out. It's not compelling enough. Donald is so much of a throwaway character. I could have played Donald. Like there was no element of Donald that was compelling or fascinating. And with Victor, you watch him kind of like really like the idea that these women fawn all over him, but then he also is trying to be courteous to Donald, and he wants to squash the romance. So I'm like, what even avenue are we going in? What is even the point of this story? What are you trying to say? How is Victor simultaneously an animalistic, impulsive man, yet a man of honor? It was like it's not the new duality of man going on here. It's bad character writing, in my opinion, because they're so diametrically opposed and so opposite each other, not just in the script, but just him as a character. It was like, I'm not interested in who you are. Right. And you have Ava Gardner, who I think they spent the most time on her role. And it's also interesting. I don't know if you know this, but this film was nominated for 2 Oscars. Do you want to guess what the Oscars were for? Do you know?
Oh, I looked this up and I don't remember now. I know one was Best Actress or Best Supporting, because I remember seeing that Ava Gardner won.
Yep.
And then I can't remember what the other one was. I think they won the other one too, if I'm remembering correctly.
They didn't, but they did win the Ava Gardner one.
Okay.
And
was it screenplay?
No, it was Grace Kelly.
Oh,
as the other
lead actress?
Yeah.
Or as a supporting actress?
I think they were both kind of in the supporting actress role
category.
But yeah, so yeah.
That makes sense then.
But Grace Kelly doesn't. Like, to me, for a role like this one, she just didn't deserve it, in my opinion.
Well, it makes sense why she lost, I should say.
Yes, yeah. That would make sense. And if I'm correct, but I feel like she didn't win. I feel like she definitely lost, but Ava Gardner won, which Ava Gardner definitely deserved that victory, because she comes in and she's afraid of snakes. She doesn't know how to interact with the animals. She's definitely out of her element. Till later on, when she comes back, you see her sort of just, her comfort level has gone way up in the jungle.
All right. Quick correction here, because I just pulled it up. So Mogambo received 2 nominations. One was Ava Gardner for Best Actress in the Leading, and then Grace Kelly Best Actress Supporting. Okay. And it looks like both of them actually lost.
Oh, really? Okay.
Gardner lost to Audrey Hepburn and Roman Holiday. And then Kelly lost to Donna Reed in From Here to Eternity. So both those ladies were nominated, and both those ladies lost.
Interesting. Okay. So that's unfortunate, because in my mind I was thinking Ava Gardner had won, and that made me happy.
I was too.
She would have deserved.
That ruined our cool.
But I'm glad you looked that up so we could be for sure. But yeah, so I think when you look at all these characters, my opinion of them is just that they're they're weak, boring, uninteresting, and lazily written, all aside from Ava Gardner, who I think did the most, because I don't even think her character is written exceptionally well.
Mm-mm.
I don't. I
But
don't.
She did the most with very little.
I agree. I think that she was able to take what they gave her and transform it into something really fascinating.
Yeah.
But that's what I would say is my overall opinion on the characters in this film. And I guess you could say the jungle is a character because I do think it plays into the theme. You could say that the tribes are a character because they play into the theme. But they're more of an ethereal presence as opposed to someone we're like really focused on and looking for an arc in. And so those are my thoughts on the characters of Mogambo.
Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely with you. There wasn't a single character in this film that I found that I loved. Now, to be fair and to be true and honest and fair, all that kind of fun stuff. I did really appreciate what Gardner did. Kelly was easily the best part of this film. And it was, Eloise Kelly, right. Ava Gardner's character, Kelly, was easily the best part of this film. In those first 20 minutes when she comes in and she kind of starts and they have this fling, it's nice. They have this interesting relationship together. You're like, yeah, they definitely match. And then he puts her on the boat and she's gone. And you're like, well, I know she's coming back because I know that that's what this movie hinges on. That's the story that's here. How is she going to get back? And then she comes back and you're like, okay, that's how. That's a good way to bring her back. But yeah, like you said, this romantic tension, this love triangle, it doesn't even exist. And it's really because Eloise Kelly's she's not interested. When she sees the two of them together, she's interested in making them uncomfortable. She's almost interested in outing them, or at least pushing them to where they out themselves or to where they stop. And you could argue that it's because she's interested in Victor, so this is her way of kind of trying to get to him, which I think the way the film ends, which, major spoiler, the film ends and Grace Kelly goes back with her husband, Donald, and Eloise Kelly decides to stay with Victor. And it ends with, you imagine that they are together, and that's the end of the film.
That could be qualified as a spoiler.
Yeah, I don't think it does. This is something you would have seen coming. But, and even that, in that final resolution, I don't know about you, but that didn't work for me.
No, I didn't care.
I would have rather seen not Eloise Kelly, Ava Gardner's character. I would have rather seen her stay on those canoes and leave him. Not because of any moral justice, not because of any he gets his just desserts. I don't care about that. Because I think it would have made a better story. Because I think that it's the way they seem to be building up Gardner's character that whole time in that last 2/3 of the film. I mean, yes, there was that way you could tell that she cared about him and she enjoyed flirting with him and all those kinds of things. They enjoyed each other's company. But the whole, she ends up with him and they end up together kind of deal, that was hard for me to buy. I know that had to be the ultimate ending. Of course it did. But it wasn't the best and most satisfying ending to me. And it's not that, because as we were talking, I thought about other films that had these love triangles as we just started this conversation, and other films that came out around this time and really even earlier. And I thought of two that I thought of right off the bat. Double Indemnity from Billy Wilder is a story of a love triangle. It's about a woman who works with the man to off her husband so that they can get his money and they can be together. And of course, like all good noirs, it doesn't end happily. And then you've got, I think, the greatest American film ever made, Casablanca, is a love triangle. And it ends, again, I don't think this is a spoiler because everybody who's seen this has probably seen this film. If you haven't, you got about 10 seconds to. But in the end, our hero, our main protagonist in Casablanca, he sends off the girl with her husband. So she doesn't leave her husband. She goes off with him to continue the work because his work will stop if she leaves. So that's the ending that we get in Mogambo. Kind of the same thing. Grace Kelly goes off with her husband to continue to do the work with him. but it's not near as satisfying. It's not near as gut punching. It's nowhere near the mastery of Casablanca's ending, where we get the same thing. There's no "here's looking at you, kid." There's no "we'll always have Paris." There's no "the problems of three people don't amount to a hill of beans." I mean, I don't remember what there was because there was nothing. I can give you 3 quotes from the end of Casablanca and Rick sending off the girl, and I got nothing from Mogambo.
No.
And it was the same story, and it was the same characters and the same kind of relationship dynamic. And then we didn't touch on Donald a whole lot. Donald is just so lifeless.
Yeah,
he's
human.
He has no idea what's happening, and even we'll talk about it when we get to the dialogue and the scenes. But there was one moment in this film where it's like he's connecting the dots. He's finally getting it, and you're seeing his heart break because he's understanding what's happening. And then a couple scenes later, you realize, nope, he didn't get it. And he's a flimsy character. He's a thinly drawn man. And honestly, I can see why Grace Kelly wasn't with him. Because he wasn't there with her. Is she right? No, she's not right. Not condoning her actions in this film.
No, of course not.
But
at least it gives you some motive as to why she maybe would be interested in.
Oh, that's why you would be interested in Victor, because your husband doesn't even realize that you're leaving him right in front of his face.
Yep.
And I don't think he never comes to realize, right? Because at the end they have the whole scene where where Linda shoots Victor, and then Eloise Kelly covers for Linda when her husband shows up, and she says, "Oh, Victor was drunk and he was trying to make a pass, and your wife shot him." So he never finds out the truth. So he finds out the truth about her, and he chooses to love her anyways. There's no strength to his character. There's no point in him being in this film. It almost would have been more interesting if he was non-existent. Grace Kelly was a single woman, or maybe she was engaged to a man off somewhere, or if Donald stayed sick at the hotel or at the hut. And he was there, but he was just there for the hut. And Grace Kelly was really the anthropologist driving the journey. That would have made it more compelling, because that's about how compelling Donald was. He was as compelling as a sick man bedridden. I mean, it was disappointing to see that, because John Ford is a character filmmaker, as you said at the top of the show.
And a good one.
Good one. An excellent one. I mean, his characters in the past 2 films we've seen have been exceptional. His characters are the star of Stagecoach, and his characters in My Darling Clementine are equally strong, and they anchor the film. But in this film that needed the anchoring of the love triangle, and then if you broaden it and bring in Donald, the love square, the characters are all so weak. And the one character that is strong, Ava Gardner's Kelly, is not really interested in this love triangle. So, as you said, the stakes, they're menial. She provides great moments of comedy, but other than that, Victor's bravado gets annoying, Kelly's whiny and helpless, and Donald's just there. So really, there's no characters in this thing to root for. Now, on the note of when you think about, as you mentioned, the jungle and the tribes, just another kind of interesting thing as I looked through and looked up this film, the tribes that they used, the men that played the African tribes, were actual African tribes. Like, they were not actors. These were actual tribes in the countries and the areas they were going to, which explains why they were some of the best parts of the movie, while they were some of the best characters.
Or they felt real. They felt more real.
Yeah, why they felt real, because they were real. These were real African tribes, real Africans that were with them. And then, of course, the jungle is as real as the jungle is. I also, because I was curious about all the shots, particularly with the gorillas, because they take such a large portion of the film. I was curious if they shot those shots with the actors there and the gorillas at the same time, because they had, during that whole sequence, you had the actors responding, and then you had the shots of the gorillas doing the gorilla things, and then it was back to the actors, Gable holding his gun or holding the rope to set the net or all those things. So I looked it up. I was like, are those two connected? And what it looks like, which this can speak to the editing prowess of the film and Ford's editor. A lot of the animal scenes, animal shots, particularly with the gorillas, were shot separately in like a kind of archival footage kind of deal that was later edited back into the film with the actors. So even
for
there,
1953, tremendous editing.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yeah, no, very, very good. There was some real animal interaction, like so when Gardner's Kelly interacts with the python, for instance. When the python's on the bed, she's like, "Oh, get out of here!" and she throws the blanket. That python is real. That snake was real. And then the moment where she's in the tent and she's playing cards, playing solitaire, whatever she's doing, playing there with herself, playing cards with herself, and the panther wanders into the tent. That was a real panther that wandered in. Which that may have been a panther that completely wandered in by accident. That I didn't take enough time to dig to really find that out or not. So those interactions were real, but the interactions with the gorilla and some of the other were archival footage that was edited into the film, which speaks to the technical strength of the film in a lot of ways, but also keeps the characters separate from the action in the way that it doesn't feel like it meshes completely to where, again, the stakes with the gorillas don't feel real in that moment. So that's all I have to say kind of about the characters. I'm with you. You know, Gardner was the strength of this film. She is what made this film watchable as a character and as a driving force, as a comedic force, as a dramatic force. And the others were completely unlikable just because they were boring. They were dull. They were dumb. They were whiny. So with that, we can move now, if you want, into some of the dialogue moments. Some of the lines that stuck out to us. I've got a couple that stuck out for various reasons. Some comedic, some seemed very foreshadowing to the film, which was really nice. And then some were just really, really sad and really heartbreaking. So I'll let you go ahead and give us maybe the line that stuck out to you in the film the most, or the moment in the lines that really, this was the one you're like, oh, that was the pinnacle, and I wish it all would have felt that way.
Yeah, I think everything you said, as far as the characters go, I'm glad we had a similar reading on this. I just would be interested to see how other people could defend these other characters. And so I'm glad that we saw very much eye to eye. I think even just overall, like, you're right, Ava Gardner's the reason you watch this film, if you're looking for a good character, and then the technical aspect of the film. It's really easy to look at, right?
Yeah.
So it's like it is edited really well. And it is like, because I noticed it probably halfway through the film where I was like, oh, that's on a set, or that's in America, and that's in the country, like in a different country. Because you could just tell the way they were filming it. And I was like, those trees don't quite match, but it wasn't like, it wasn't like overly bad or anything where it was like taking you out of the film. Right. And so I think for me, one of the things is that for this movie, the lines of dialogue that stuck out are more comedic and not as much as, like, I didn't record many deep lines when I was watching this one. And I'm not saying that means that there aren't a lot. I think there's probably at least a few. But, you know, one of the lines that sticks out to me is very early on, they rescue a baby rhino. Yeah, and Ava Gardner goes, oh.
Hey, a kangaroo.
You're like, okay. Like, you can't tell if she's being stupid or if she really has no idea because she's just that far removed from being in that world. And I think it is the latter. I think it is she's so far removed from that world that she's not realizing that that's a rhino, not a kangaroo.
Yeah, because she's this New York high life kind of female. So the jungle would have been completely new to her.
Yeah, so that that to me was a great, like, funny comedic moment from Ava Gardner, and I was like, that's such a, it was like slapstick. It was stupid. It was like a stupid line, but one that obviously I remembered and will think about. And another one of the lines is actually the one I used for like my letterboxed like caption is nobody will be surprised but the gorillas. There's Ava Gardner was such in her, like, so in her element in the scene where she's sitting there, and there you can feel the tension between Victor and Grace Kelly's Linda. The tension is so there. It's so awkward there. It's so uncomfortable because you can tell that Ava knows what's going on. Donald doesn't. And Linda knows that Ava knows, but I don't think that Victor knows that Eloise knows. So there's a whole interesting dynamic there, which I think is really talented writing to be able to pull that off and make it look really good. In fact, that scene at dinner is one of the better scenes in the entire movie.
Yeah, it is.
Ava Gardner sings at the piano, and you have the conversation, and you have Victor decide, we're going to go see the gorillas. It's like, oh, the outcome? Nobody's going to be surprised by the outcome except for maybe the gorillas. It's like everybody knows where this is headed. Everybody knows the path you're going down. So you can try to play it off as though it's simple and you're just trying to do the right thing and trying to be kind. But in reality, we know what's really going on. So those are a couple lines for me. One that's like, both come from Ava because, again, she's just the best character in general. But a comedic line where she has no idea what's going on. And another comedic line where she's all too aware of what's going on. And so just showing the dynamic of her character from beginning to the end of the film.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are good. I definitely noted down the, hey, a kangaroo.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife, she watched this movie with me too. She even looked at me like, is this girl stupid?
Yeah.
And I was like,
at that point.
I don't know. I don't make any judgments until it's over. And I think there was probably, ignorance is probably, like you said, kind of the better word. That she just is completely clueless to this world. So I wrote down a couple more than that.
And I have more, but I'll let you share some.
Not really any that were groundbreaking, not to any level of My Darling Clementine, and certainly not Stagecoach. The writing just wasn't that good. The lines weren't that important. They weren't that deep. But the line / moment maybe that broke my heart the most was when they've already gone to see the gorillas. They're out in that area. Linda has just been out with Victor, and they've had, I believe that was when they had their first kiss. It was shortly after that, but Linda comes back into the tent with Donald. I feel like I just said his name wrong, but nope, it's Donald. Okay.
Yep.
Mind went dumb for a minute. But she comes back in the tent with Donald, and a lot of this scene is filmed in a silhouette. Mm-hmm. So the way that the tents that they're living in, they have this divider down the middle of them, this mosquito net that they have to have, obviously, to keep them safe from the mosquitoes while they sleep. So it divides down the center of the tent, separates Linda from Donald, down their husband, and he has this whole moment where he's trying to put some flirtation, some romance into the moment. He's not aware that Grace Kelly's just been off with Victor. He's not aware of that at all. He never comes to be aware, as we mentioned in this film. But he's trying to put some romance into the evening, into the situation, trying to romance his wife a little bit. And we find out later, the next day or a couple days later, it's because that was their anniversary night. And Linda had completely forgotten, or she at least appeared to have forgotten. And if she didn't forget, she didn't care. But there's this line where he asks her, when they're in the silhouettes in this tent, which I thought was just the most beautiful moment, the most beautiful scene. It was really the pinnacle of this film for me. That if everything else had matched up to that level, it would have been amazing.
Yep.
But he says, Linda, darling, are you still my girl? And I thought in that moment, I was like, he's got it. He knows what's going on. Finally, this man is aware. And her response is, "Don't be so childish." She doesn't say yes. She doesn't say no. She says, "Don't be so childish." And then I guess he responds, I've got it written down that he responds in this, "That's good enough for me." And that moment between the silhouettes and the netting separating them and just having their dark form and him trying to turn on the lights, and she's like, "Turn that light off. It's in my face. I don't want to see it." Maybe because she doesn't want her sins exposed to the light, just adding a little bit of theological slant to the conversation. All right, we're moving on.
No, but it's true. It's
Yeah,
exactly what, and
it's
she doesn't want to
exactly what that moment feels like.
She doesn't want to face him. She doesn't want to have to look at him after what she's done.
Right.
And so
her response to him, just the "don't be so childish." I was like, oh, just knife to the heart, the man. And he says, "That's good enough for me." And I thought he knew. And if he knew in that moment, if it turned out that he knew and the film went different from there, that would have made all the difference, I think, in the way this film ends, in that final third, that final act of the film. But he's still blissfully unaware, even after that moment. And that was the pinnacle of this film for me, was that tent, that scene, that exchange from the lighting to the moment to the character depth. It felt like that was the deepest that any of the moments went. The most heartfelt and heart-wrenching moments of everything. Yeah, that's what I wanted the film to be. The whole film, I wanted to be that level of depth and heart and hurt and realization, and it just wasn't. So that was the big one for me, as far as like serious lines and serious moments go in this film, that really stuck out. That I went back afterwards and I wanted to rewatch that scene because it made such an impression. And unfortunately, the rest of the film didn't.
No, I agree. That scene for me was one that I think about, actually. I think that scene and the scene where they're all at dinner are the two scenes that I think are easily the best. They're the only, in my opinion, maybe memorable ones. Like the rest of them, sure, you might remember them, but they're not going to be something you're really thinking about.
Right.
But without jumping too much into scenes, with the dialogue, I did have one more line, one more interaction that I felt like I should add, because I feel like it was a good indicator of what I think. Here's another good indicator of the quality of a film. If you have two people who are talking about a film, you and I, hypothetically speaking, and we come up with multiple different ways this story could have gone that would have been more interesting, that's a good indicator that they didn't do their job as screenwriters to make this the best story they could have made it. Right. And they just wrote it and got it out there. So that's another reason why there's not a lot of dialogue that we're like running back to and gushing over, that you're not getting that Casablanca density. You're not getting that like double indemnity quips. You're not getting like the brief encounter, heart throbbing, like just heartbreaking lines of dialogue. If you get one, and you're lucky you got one. Right. And the one line that I think describes kind of Victor's character, and that you see who he is he claims that he makes his contribution to this mixed up community they call the world. He's like, what else could there be? And Linda says, that sounds like the remark of a lonely man. And his response is, could be. And you see him, because he is a lonely man. He lives out in the jungle. He doesn't have a woman with him. He's only with the animals and with the tribes people and with the few men he has surrounding him at his camp to help him trap. There's not this sense of real community for him, right? Or a person, right? And he also is describing whatever he thinks is his contribution to this mixed up community. Like trapping animals maybe could be a contribution, but is it really? Like, could you do something more fulfilling for you and for the world?
Yeah.
I think so. And Linda clocks it and says, like, you are, she calls him lonely. She said, that sounds like the remark of someone who's not actually okay, who is like feeling lonely in this world. And he's like, well, maybe it is.
Yeah.
Who knows? And that's it. That's all we get. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, why could we not just one more scoop of dirt, just one more scoop of dirt, and we could have had great like conversations. We could have had brilliant like, and it's only frustrating again because I don't think every writer or every director is able to like squeeze that out.
Right.
But my first 2 John Ford films that I've watched, they were huge indicators that he could. He had every power, like ever, to say, hey, we need a little more, right? We need a little more out of this. And so it just is unfortunate that that's what we're left with, is we're left with what feels like we've like turned the faucet to where it should come on and we just stop right before the water pours. Like there's water there, it's in the pipes, but it doesn't come out. And it's just unfortunate that that's what we get when you get great lines of dialogue like this, because they're only great for the moment that they're in, and they don't permeate. They don't sit there and really take over a fog of that character. And so that's unfortunate. But yeah, I think to finish up, I think discussing a few scenes, just how we felt about these few moments of the movie, unless you have more dialogue you'd like to add.
Yeah, I've got a couple more that I'll throw in that actually were kind of clever, which is both makes them stick out, but also makes it really disappointing. There's two lines. One, I believe this is Ava Gardner and Clark Gable's characters, and she asked him, referring to fighting animals. I believe it's fighting hippos. She says, "Why are they fighting?" And his response is, "Probably over a female."
Why are they fighting?
Probably over a female.
Thank you very much for everything.
I'll put it on the bill.
Yep.
And I was like, that's some great foreshadowing. Because I mean, I knew at this point, I knew enough about the story to know where it was going. I was like, that's a great foreshadowing line. And then there's another where it's either she that says it, either Gardner, or it's one of the men that are with Victor, trapping with him. And the line is, "Looks like we're in for a little storm." And I'm like, that's another great foreshadowing line, because it is. There's rain fixing to come. There's thunder in the distance. But of course, taking it out of the bigger context, we're in for a relational storm. And it just, the rest of the film never quite stood up to this moment.
No.
It just, those bits where you were like, the writer was on cue. He knew he got his job. He understood the assignment. And then the rest of it, it's not. And there's moments, and there's other little funny lines, little quips. One of the men helping Victor, he says, "I came out here to the jungle for my health. I found it." He's this really big bellied man. And then another wonderful quip from Ava Gardner. She says, Victor's just gotten back. He's rescued Linda from danger, from being out in the woods, from wandering off. And he says she was in danger. And Gardner goes, "From the wild animals, you mean? Seems she was in quite a bit of danger here on the porch." After she just saw them having their romantic
I recorded that one as well
outside the bedroom door. So there were these moments, these glimmers of the writers understood the assignment. And then there were moments where, like you said, we get "probably so." We go from "I wish I had" to "probably so."
Could be.
And that sucks.
That does suck.
It really, really does. So yeah, that's all I've got on lines. I've got one more that I'm gonna save for the very end of the send off of this video.
Fair enough.
And then after that, but we can go in and we can start talking about some of these scenes and some of these moments that we did remember in a film that was largely unmemorable.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that that's good. I think those lines of dialogue, you're right. There's decent foreshadowing, sometimes a bit on the nose. I think there's a
Oh
storm
yeah.
coming.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. And but it still is interesting, right? I don't care. And it's also 1953, so who cares if it's a little on the nose? I'm not looking at 1953 to change cinema. I'm looking at it
Right.
for what it is at that time, right? So, but I will say that those lines of dialogue too that we've kind of talked about tend to come from the more memorable scenes,
Yeah,
right?
they do.
And so there is that element of you have these great moments that are unfortunately just overshadowed by just mediocrity throughout, right? And that's unfortunate.
And
And
that pretty
so,
much sums up the film.
mhm.
Great moments overshadowed by mediocrity.
Yep. And it is just one of those things where I don't know why it happened like that. I don't know who kept them from it doing better. I really don't know. But
Yeah.
this is what we got. So I think for me, like I've discussed, you have that dinner scene that I think is, I believe, the best character work they do that night.
Yeah.
Because you get to see Ava Gardner cut loose. You get to see the tension build between Victor and Linda. You get to see the obliviousness of Donald. It's all of these different like characters on full display for who they are, right?
Right.
You have Linda riddled with guilt. You have Victor, who probably wasn't even riddled with guilt as much as he just probably preferred Eloise Kelly. He probably
Right.
was just like, I actually prefer her. Like, there is that, and he should, right? Not just because
Right.
she's not
Yeah.
married, but because
Good.
she's more suited for him anyway. So that's where it turns into, okay, well, let's see what else we can. What else can we pull from this well, right? What else other scenes can we pull? The tent scene that you discussed was, I thought, terrific. It's a beautiful moment. Like, as far as the use of shadow and silhouette and like discussion and dialogue, you're right. It could be summed up as like the pinnacle of like purity in this film, of like pure filmmaking at its most top tier. And so, unfortunately, we only get that one scene of that. I thought the opening credits were interesting with the tribal music behind us. It was it set you into the mood of the film immediately. And to me, that was great. I feel like not every film can do that well, but it brings you right into the jungle and you feel it. You feel the atmosphere, you feel the tone, and you know exactly what you're in for from the first 20 seconds. So maybe you couldn't classify it as a scene, but I would, because you're seeing things and you're seeing the world of Mogambo and the animals and all of that. So I think that is I think that you could classify it as a scene. But yeah, I'm trying to think if there's any more that I'm like. The initial scene between Clark Gable and Ava Gardner, where they're in the hut together with the snake, and she sees the snake, and you feel that chemistry, that steaminess come from that moment.
Yep.
Like, oh, okay, they might have something there. Which I think not too long after that was the hippos, if I'm not mistaken.
May have been. Yeah.
I don't remember because it's just not super memorable. But anyway, I'll let you take some. That if there's one you really want to talk in depth about, because we've sort of talked in depth about that dinner scene and that end scene already.
Right. Yeah. Man, I feel like we're just poo-pooing on this film, and I hate it, man. I was really hoping that, and I knew we wouldn't, but I was hoping that one of us would see the merit and we'd be able to have a kind of a clash of a conversation. But I got what I knew we would get, just very kind of mediocre responses on both ends. So I will give one other, and this one doesn't play near to the depth of the other scenes we've talked. This one's just kind of a fun scene, but it's when our party has traveled to this village, to this tribal African village, and he's requesting men to go with them to take them up to where the gorillas are. And there's this priest there that kind of resides over the village. This white priest, this English priest who serves the village there, and he tells them that the men are willing to go if Victor survives the test of courage or something of that nature. He says they're willing to go for the usual price. And this test of courage, the women that are with him, either Kelly or Linda, one of them or both of them, they ask, what is this test of courage? To which the reply is, oh, it's sort of like darts. And then we proceed to see Clark Gable standing in front of this wall, just basically arms out, or arms up, or whatever. And the test of courage that is like darts is the tribal people are shooting arrows at him.
Well, they're throwing spears.
Oh, it's spears. That's right.
Yeah,
they're throwing spears around him, and he's just got to stand there courageously and not move. The test of courage is, are you going to move when the spears are thrown at you, or are you going to trust, and are you going to stand there and just let what happens happen? Are you courageous enough for them to throw giant darts at you and stand in front of this wall? So that was kind of a fun scene, but it wasn't one that was super memorable. I mean, that's not true. It was one that I remembered enough. It was memorable and it was fun, but it wasn't one that had a depth or a real significance to.
Yes. I think that's a great way to put it, because what does that tell us? What new thing does that tell us about his character? Mm-hmm. Nothing. We knew he was brave. We knew he was courageous. We knew he could do this. It was for aesthetic pleasure only, and it adds absolutely nothing to the plot.
Yeah.
Like, do you really think we're going to watch Victor get speared before the end of the movie?
There's no stakes for us. Like, we know that he's not. I mean, he's in danger, maybe, but it's not like these guys are trying to spear him. They're trying to get as close as they can without hitting him. It's like shooting the apple off the person's head.
Yep.
Is what they're doing.
Yep. And so I think that's a great scene to bring up, because it's actually, I think, the epitome of the movie. It looks really good. It's pretty compelling. Has absolutely zero depth.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're saying, like, you hate that we're, like, kind of bashing this film, but at the end of the day, that's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to be critical. Like, when we were looking at all these scenes in the other two movies, I could do nothing but gush about them. I had nothing but positive things to say about them. I don't even think I had a single nitpick with really either of them. And so now I come here and it's like, I'm struggling to find the positives. I'm struggling to find what do I like about it, which makes me start to wonder, is it rated too highly? Is 2.5 maybe too generous of a score? Because sure, it's technically brilliant and you have a couple good moments and one good character.
How much are those worth?
But how much do those really value, right? Like, how much am I going back to this? I will probably never watch Mogambo again. I will be showing my son Stagecoach and My Darling Clementine. And with joy and excitement for him to get to see those amazing characters and brilliant, like, scenes. Man, Mogambo is so frustrating. I'm sorry, like, I know it was on your watch list. I bet it feels good to get it off there. For sure.
It does.
Right.
And it's the thing about when films are on your watch list forever, it's either you're going to watch it and you're going to go, man, why did I wait so long? Or you're going to watch it and you're going to go, that's why I waited so long. And unfortunately with Mogambo, it's the latter.
And it was just an instinctual film sense that we had. That it was like, for me, it was so bad I had never even heard of it, which is true. But I think, unfortunately, John Ford, even after he had made pretty too close to perfect films, still, unfortunately, would have misses. And Mogambo is a big miss for me, and I think for you as well.
Yeah, and every director does, right? I mean, all of the great directors. 98% of the great directors have at least one miss in their filmography.
Yep.
And
that's okay, because John Ford will always be regarded. He won't be remembered from Mogambo.
No.
And that's great. And you know what? I bet maybe even if he regrets it, oh well, got him a couple nominations.
Yeah, he got paid.
Mogambo got, if Mogambo can get a couple of nominations, you can get out there and make something. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, you know, my brother, we saw a movie recently and we watched this trailer. I can't even remember what the movie was about, but he knows my aspirations to be a filmmaker, and he leans over to me as we're watching this god awful trailer, and he said, "If you don't make a movie, that's on you." And I was like, you know what? That is so accurate, right? And now when you watch a movie like Mogambo, despite its large in scale, beauty, and everything else, it's like, I could have written something better than what we got. I know we have written something better than what Mogambo was. And I think that is just the unfortunates of this John Ford marathon. But it's also good because now we're getting to see every side of John Ford, and not just what he is when he's not a Western director, but arguably what he is when the film that he picked to direct isn't good. So we thank you for listening in on our discussion of Mogambo. I cannot wait to hear everybody's thoughts, to see if they watch it, if they take the time. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. If you're a John Ford completist, yeah, watch it. If you're not, there's no hurry. There's so many other good movies out there. If you watch Mogambo before you watch The Godfather or something, like,
That's on you.
That's on you. Don't do that. So, but as always, we thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe, like this video. Be staying tuned as we have 3 more John Ford films that we're going to be going through, all of which I'm excited for. And I believe the
2
next
of which are bona fide classics.
Yes. And I believe the next on our list, if I'm not mistaken, is The Searchers.
You're correct.
Yeah.
Yep,
and
The
so
Searchers
I'm
is
really
up next. We're returning to a John Wayne classic.
Yep, this is one I'm really excited for. I could not be more ecstatic to watch this one. This was one of the ones when we were talking about John Ford that I was like, this is a must watch in this series for me. So we can discuss it and talk about it. So I'm looking forward to that. We also encourage you guys to listen to other podcasts such as Film Spotting with Josh and Adam, and their sister podcast, The Next Picture Show, where they take 2 films, one from the past and one from the present, and they talk about the sort of similar, I would say, like structure as we could have whenever we discuss a pretentious film and a film bro film. But theirs is taking one that is from the past that influenced the present. So be sure to be listening to them, and then also Blank Check with Griffin and David. Very interesting discussion on there. Very informational. And so that, if you're looking for like very informational ones, would do that. For other YouTube channels, I'm also going to throw out a couple of other recommendations. There's one called Like Stories of Old. It's an excellent film essayist who dives into very personal films of his that that have changed his life and his appreciation of film, but also just kind of discussing the current like state of film in general. And then you have The House of Tabula, which is a more intellectual, more not informational like Griffin and David, but I would say it's more heady, it's more philosophical, and he discusses not just film but art in general. And the last one is Thomas Flight, who is a great other film essayist who also has a letterbox under the same name, Thomas Flight. It's got a little eagle on it, can't miss it. But all of those people I would highly recommend listening to and watching on YouTube. They have been very informative for me, and are all part of the reason why we're doing this podcast on my end. Yeah. And so, Nolan, do you have anything else that you would like to finish off with?
Well, I'm just going to leave you with kind of one of the bidding remarks from Eloise Kelly to Victor. To you and your noble nastiness.
And with that, we hope you all have a great night, and we'll see you next time.
You can get into the boat now.
Thank you, Brownie.
Are you sure you're ready to go?
quite sure.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
I'm finished.